comma, the mighty, comma, period. That's what you would say in your text talk to text using your hands-free phone, right? Question mark. That's what we're talking about today, the comma. So, in this lecture, comma rules are really hard to understand. And the reason why there's a lot of misunderstanding with commas is there's about 18 comma rules, and sometimes they conflict. And they conflict because they have two functions. One is to make the grammar in a sentence clear. All right, it tells us what the sentence boundary pieces parts are. But it also has the sound. All right, and so comma rules also sort of approximate pauses in writing. And occasionally those things affect understanding. So for example here, we have a couple examples. Let's eat grandpa, or let's eat grandpa. Now, in the first example, grandpa's dead and everybody's standing around going, dinner. All right. In the second example, it's encouraging grandpa to come and eat with the rest of the family. So clearly commas are pretty important because they do in fact change the meaning of a sentence. All right, here's another example. My daughter studies rocks and flies. All right, so in this example, this is one daughter, and she's studying both rocks. So, we're talking about geology there, and she's studying flies. All right, so that's biology. All right, or if you put in some commas, my daughter studies rocks and flies. All right, and so in that case, the daughter does three things. She studies things, she studies books, she studies homework. She plays in a band, and she is a pilot. All right, the comma really, really matters, and it's a cause of contention in a lot of ways. All right, now a lot of times students sit there and think 18 comma rules, and they all don't seem to make sense, and the teachers all disagree, and oh my God, I just might as well get a handful of commas, put them in my hand, and just go and let them land randomly on my page, because that's about as well as I'm ever going to be able to please any teacher regarding commas. All right, and if that has been your experience, I am truly, truly sorry. All right, as a writing lab coordinator, as somebody who's done writing lab work for really a long time, I can tell you that there are about 7 comma rules that almost all teachers agree on. And so those are the ones I'm going to hold you to in this class. And these are the 7 that you can pretty much consistently count on in your interactions with future teachers. All right, so the first one has to do with commas before coordinating conjunctions. All right, and that's in a compound sentence. A compound sentence is 2 full sentences that are joined together by a coordinating conjunction. That's the definition. All right, there are only 7 coordinating conjunctions, so you only have to memorize these 7. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And if you read those, they read out fanboys, which is an easy way to remember them. All right, so you can say, I like pears, comma, but I hate papaya. All right, so I like pears. That's a full sentence. I hate papaya is also a full sentence. All right, and you are joining them together with this comma and that coordinating conjunction. All right. However, you cannot, I like pears, here's your full sentence, hate papaya, not a full sentence. It's missing a subject. All right, so in that case, you cannot have the comma and the but. You can only have the but. You have to have a full sentence on both sides of the coordinating conjunction in order to use the comma. Comma rule number 2. Comma when the dependent clause is before the independent clause. All right, and that's just grammar for independent clause is a full sentence, and a dependent clause is a section of a sentence that is not a full sentence. All right, and when you put those together, it's called a complex sentence. All right, and so complex sentences use subordinating conjunction. There's lots and lots of these. Since, when, while, as, because, unless, as if. There's tons of these. And it's an easier way to remember the coordinating rather than the subordinating. Right? And the problem with subordinating conjunctions is they move. All right, so because the gentleman opened the door for her, comma, the woman with many boxes glanced at him gratefully. So here, because it started with because, then you need the comma here to hook together this fragment, because the gentleman opened the door for her, because that's a fragment. And then here's your independent clause. The woman with many boxes glanced at him gratefully. Now, if you reorganize that sentence so that the independent clause comes first, the woman with many boxes glanced at him gratefully, that's a full thought. And now the subordinate conjunction holds these two together. And so the gentleman opened the door for her is an independent clause. Now you do not need this comma here because the subordinating conjunction is strong enough to hold together this sentence and this sentence without the comma. This is probably the part of the comma rules that's the most confusing for students. If you have further questions about it, you can always look at your rules for writers. This is the part that I mostly have to really reteach students. They have a hard time with this. And there's a good reason. This is a little confusing. So if you're not quite sure, that's okay. Keep practicing. We'll figure it out together. Comma rule number 3. This one you know. All right, separating day and year, city from state and country. You do this at the top of your lecture notes. You do this when you're writing letters to people. Everybody knows these. All right, commas in a list. This one's pretty common too. Students usually understand this one. All right, and what's happening here is the commas are replacing the word and in a list. All right, so a full Irish breakfast includes eggs and bacon and roasted tomato and toast and tea and orange juice. All right. Now this last comma here is called the Oxford comma. And the Oxford comma is a comma that is often in debate. It goes in and out of style. Sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out. And that Oxford comma actually causes fist fights. For example, on the New York Times floor, an editor and a writer got into a big fight about whether or not they should have that comma. And it was actually a fist fight. I suspect they were actually upset about something else. All right, but the reasoning works on both sides. Remember that a comma tells us sentence boundaries. All right, so in this case here it's separating eggs, bacon, roasted tomato, toast, tea, and orange juice. So it's separating those, so you need a comma. All right, also it's a pause. All right, eggs, bacon, roasted tomato, toast, tea, and orange juice. You need the comma because it reads correctly. On the other hand, it's also replacing the word and. So what this says with that comma is a full Irish breakfast includes eggs and bacon and roasted tomato and toast and tea and orange juice. And nobody would say and, so clearly you don't need that comma. Either way you're okay if you put the comma in or if you don't put the comma in, but I can tell you that probably if you include the comma, it clears up any kind of confusion. And so it's probably safer to include it, but you probably won't be dinged if you don't. All right, here's another example of commas in a list. A warm, gentle, kind man. Jerry made Julie's heart sing. All right, so warm, gentle, and kind are all modifying man. All right, and so you need a comma to separate those out. And then this comma here is separating the entire introductory phrase from your main idea, your independent clause. Jerry made Julie's heart sing. All right, so let's talk about that introductory information. So commas used to separate introductory information from the main sentence, and there's lots of ways to do this. I've seen teachers who say if it's one word, you need a comma, like here, no, comma, Susan did not appreciate my candor. All right, I've had teachers tell me you got to have at least 5 words before you need the comma. So thinking I was helping Susan, comma, I told her I saw her husband kissing someone else. Both of those are correct. I would say as a student, what you want to look for is in your teacher's writing, does your teacher use a lot of commas for the introductory phrases? If yes, put in the comma. If you notice your teacher seems to be super comma shy, maybe don't put in the commas. All right, and you always have an example of your teacher's writing because your teacher gave you the syllabus. Your teacher gives you assignment sheets. All right, anything your teacher created will give you an idea of your teacher's comma style. All right, so here's another one that students sometimes have difficulty with, is the commas in a non-restrictive clause. This is non-essential information. It's grammar. It's fancy words for non-essential information. All right, and so I like to think about the non-restrictive clause rule as sort of like the game Squeeze in The Price is Right. All right, so if you've watched The Price is Right, they have this game called Squeeze, and what it is you have 6 numbers, and you have to figure out which number doesn't belong, and then you pull it out and they squeeze it together, and if you've pulled out the right number, then you win the car because it's the price of the car. All right, so it's the same idea here. All right, your full sentence is the people in the queue were very satisfied. Okay, this extra information, who managed to get tickets, is extra information, so if you pull it out and the sentence makes sense without it, then you need commas on both sides to sort of separate it out. All right, so in this sentence, the people in the queue who managed to get tickets were very satisfied. And that's saying that all the people were very satisfied because they all got tickets. All right, now it's restrictive if the information is necessary for the sentence to make sense. So the people in the queue who managed to get tickets were very satisfied. All right, without the commas, this suggests that some people were satisfied because they got tickets, and some people were very unsatisfied because they did not get tickets. All right, and so you want to be aware of what you're meaning to say. If you want to make that information restrictive, no commas. All right, and here's our last rule. Commas before direct speech or quote. You should be pretty familiar with this when you are using information from a research paper, if you're using dialogue. All right, anytime you're setting off a speech or quote, you want to put a comma. So here's our examples. All right, so Beth said, comma, girl, I think you are a mad woman who has a death wish. All right, or if you want to put Beth said at the end, girl, I think you are a mad woman who has a death wish, comma, said Beth. All right, that would be acceptable. All right, and that's in dialogue. If you're using research in a paper, so Shakespeare wrote, comma, to thine own heart be true. All right, and so here's who the author is setting off the direct quote. Another example, according to Brene Brown, comma, we are all hardwired for connection and belonging. All right, and so you're separating your author from what they directly, he or she said. And now here is your practice. All right, so your job here is to print this out, fix the text. All the different comma errors are included here. Right now what this reads is, according to one end of the world theorist, the poles were reversed on May 5, 2000. The author of the book, 5/5/2000, predicted polar reversal would lead to ice cap melting, flooding, atmospheric cooling, and millions of people dying. Many people readied themselves for the end of the world, but by May 6, 2000, nothing had happened. Since there was no difference in geography from May 5 to May 6, the theory was debunked. Your job, fix that up.